What you're going to discover today is you have the power to make a positive difference for the parents, a difference in their quality care, and a difference in the amount of assets that can be preserved. With planning, you can get Medicaid to help pay the high cost of care without losing everything. And without planning, you can just, you'll probably just continue to spend down. One way or the other, you have made a decision, either a decision to help them protect some of their asset, or if you don't do any planning, a decision to spend everything down. So most people don't. Most people, it's what I call last minute asset protection. Most people don't plan for asset protection in case of nursing home admission, because honestly, I think all of us think that, well, this won't happen to me. I won't have to go to a nursing home. I'm not going to think about this. So they don't plan. They don't think it'll ever be a factor in their life. So they just keep it in their names. Even at the last minute, things can be done to help protect some of the assets from having to be spent down. And you can make decisions on how to pay for care. You don't have to go to broke if and when you need long-term care, and you can receive assistance from government programs like Medicare, Medicaid, or VA. There's things that you can do, so just know that, but you've got to take action. So I'm going to give you just a couple of examples. One of them is protecting assets for a single person. Maybe one parent's deceased. Let's say your dad is deceased and your mom is going into a nursing home. So let's look at this. And this lady honestly has way more assets than our typical client, but at the rate of $8,333 plus per month long-term care expense, even someone that thinks they have a substantial amount of assets, it can spend down really quick. And you see this lady has $100,000 in checking and savings, $100,000 IRA, home on 10 acres, 2 vehicles, life insurance, and prepaid burial. So how would this pan out? Well, we would first of all separate our assets into countable assets and exempt assets. Well, our home on 10 acres is exempt, but we got the question mark there. Remember, exempt but subject to recoupment later on. She had 2 vehicles, so we're going to put one in the exempt category, one in the countable category. We're assuming they're both worth exactly $15,000 each, which of course never happens, but just for sake of argument here. Life insurance, remember she had $50,000 in life insurance, but they don't look at the death benefit. They look at the cash value. So what's the cash value for life policy? Well, if it's a term policy, which we're going to assume here, the cash value would be 0. Now, this is not always the case. You may have had a whole life policy and the cash value may have been $20,000, $30,000, may have been $50,000 on a $50,000 policy. It may be paid in full, or it may even have more money than a death benefit. So this is something you have to check to see what the cash value of something like this is. And prepaid burial, fortunately this lady had that paid in advance, and so that's good. So that's over in the exempt category. So we look at the countable assets, and this is what we would have to look at to see what could be done to protect assets so that she could qualify for Medicaid assistance as soon as possible. And with planning in a case like this, for this lady, we were able to save approximately half of her assets for the benefit of the family. And again, what would have happened if she hadn't planned? Well, she would have spent it all down. She would have just wrote a check every month until it was all gone. And we see that happen just on a very regular basis. That's why we're doing these webinars. We want people to know that it doesn't have to go down that way. You can take action in most cases to protect a lot of it. So, well, let's shift gears just a minute And what if there was a well spouse at home? Again, well spouse in quotes, because uh, mom's going to nursing home, but dad's, quote, the well spouse. He's been the caregiver, because I had a guy just this week said, one's got the mind, one's got the body. One's got cognitive ability, but is not doing so good physically, and one's doing better physically, but got Alzheimer's. Well, what about in a situation like this? And mom's going to the nursing home, but dad's still at home, and he's not doing so well physically, maybe. Well, in this case here, Mr. Reed's the one diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He's been discharged to nursing home, and the monthly cost of this nursing home care is $8,000 a month, which is a little bit less than the statewide average. Mrs. Reed is a well spouse at home. So what's at stake here for Mrs. Reed? Well, everything, really. Their entire life savings and the financial survival of the spouse at home. It wasn't a case we did. We thought when it was too late. We run into this sometimes, a situation just exactly like this. And the lady, the quote well spouse at home, didn't know. She'd been told that they were over resourced and she'd just have to spend it all down. So that's what she did. She spent all of her money down for her husband's care in a nursing home. And once all the money was gone, their home was paid for, she took out a home equity loan on the home, and she spent that money down. And then he finally qualified for Medicaid. And now what about her? She's 78 years old, broke, and because she took out a loan on her house, she's pretty deep in debt. So now she's having to decide every month, do I pay the house payment this month, or do I eat this month? Terrible situation. It didn't have to be that way. She could have done some planning to have protected most of it, for her benefit. What about the one at home? People forget that sometimes. And people have been married for years. They'll go down with a ship. They'll spend all of the money, if they think they have to, for the benefit of the one in a nursing home. And that was the case here. Mrs. Reed was told that the assets would have to be divided, and they'd put a lien on the house, and they'd take it after the death of the second house. And she was concerned her husband wouldn't get the care he needs, and that they'd lose everything. And unless they do Medicaid planning, that could be the case. But even at the last minute, substantial assets can be protected with, by doing some planning. So in this case, we're looking at all of the assets they got, and then we're dividing them up between exempt assets and countable assets. And married couples get a better deal basically than single people do. It seems like the law is in favor of the well spouse at home. If they do some planning, they can protect most of the assets, but again, it's not automatic at all. A lot of folks just lose all the money, like the story I told you just a minute ago. So the good news for this lady, Mrs. Reed, using Medicaid rules that are quite complex, we were able to get Mr. Reed on Medicaid. So we set it up that Mrs. Reed was able to keep most of the couple's assets, and she also got some of his Social Security check. And we set it up so there's no lien on the home or the adjoining land. And so she was really set up for life. But she's one of the ones that actually did some planning, did the planning she needed to do, where her husband's okay. He's in the nursing home. He's getting the care he needs. And she's also okay because she's able to keep a good chunk of the assets and getting part of his Social Security check. She's okay. She's financially got what she needs to pay for her care. And, she needs some non-medical home care to help pay for her care. She's got money to do it. The decisions you need to make now, the law gives no one the right to act for you. If you don't decide, the law will impose arbitrary legal rules. You have the exclusive right to determine who will advocate for you and how your property will be handled now in the future. And with proper planning, you can actually be in control. This is so important that people do some planning up front And again, say if if they decline in the future, where they want to be, who they want to make the decisions, and actually have the legal documents in place to make that happen. Don't just tell them. I had someone this week said, well, mom told me. Well, mom didn't have anything in writing, so you got to have the legal documents in place. Who's going to make the decisions for you, and how your property is going to be handled now and in the future. But with proper planning, a person can be in control. How does all of this work? Well, it's pretty simple. It starts with a call. You call our office. If we feel we can help, we'll schedule a 30-minute meeting in person or via Zoom or phone, where we'll talk to you, see what your situation is, see how we can help. We'll do an analysis of your current plan. We'll give you some clarity as to what's going on with your issues and a blueprint to how to achieve the goals you want to achieve. And we'll talk what this would cost, the amount of the investment required to achieve these goals. And if we mutually decide to move forward, we'll schedule our next meeting for planning purposes, and then we'll prepare any necessary documents to be signed by you, and we'll work together until a plan is complete. And my personal guarantee, you will know more than you did before you got on today. You'll have an analysis of what happens if you do nothing. You'll see what can happen if you take action. Your time will not be wasted. We look forward to visiting with you soon.